Happy Monday. Welcome to the Israel Daily News Podcast. I'm your host, Shanna Fold. I'm here to give you the headlines so you can get caught up quickly. You're listening, so you're already on top of your game. Survive and thrive, people. Knowledge is the best weapon. Today is Monday, December 28th, 2020. Let's get to the news. After Israel entered its third nationwide lockdown Sunday, so that's yesterday, a top health ministry official argued that a full lockdown isn't actually happening since people are still going to work and school. Business owners have threatened to stay open. During a heated Knesset discussion on Sunday, the head of the health ministry's public services division says, "We're using the word lockdown even though it's not a lockdown." She went on to say that there are restrictions that may not be strict enough to significantly lower infections. Meanwhile, in an attempt to survive financially, business owners are vowing to defy the lockdown rules. Channel 13 reports that representatives of business owners are set to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu himself on Tuesday. They're planning to ask him to make sure the restrictions on their activities won't last longer than 2 weeks. Yesterday, Health Minister Yuli Edelstein also condemned the Knesset lawmakers for voting to allow all schools to remain open during the quote-unquote lockdown. He says this decision would only prolong the closure. During the next few weeks, you can prepare for sporadic police checks on roads during the day and even more at night. A team of Moroccan diplomats arrived in Israel last night to prepare for the reopening of a liaison office in Tel Aviv, which is supposed to open next month. A liaison office is a step down from a full-blown embassy, but still exciting nevertheless. There are plans to establish full embassies in the future. Last week, Moroccan Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita announced the plan to reopen its diplomatic office in Israel after having closed it about 20 years ago. It had been shut down to mark solidarity with Palestinians during the Second Intifada. The Moroccan team that arrived Sunday night will be meeting with the foreign ministry in the next few days to prepare for the arrival of an official high-level delegation next month to reopen the liaison office. Last week, a joint Israeli-American delegation visited the capital of Morocco, Rabat, to sign a declaration of peace. It represents renewed ties between Israel and Morocco and also the United States' recognition of Moroccan sovereignty over the disputed Western Sahara region. Direct flights are set to begin in the beginning of 2021. I'm going to take a moment away from the news to ask you to support this show. You can send over a monthly contribution if you're enjoying this report and think that it brings you value. There's a link in the show notes on the podcast where you can send a $5 or $10 monthly contribution to support the work that goes into this. The site is anchor.fm/Israel Daily News /support. You can also refer the show to 2 friends or leave a review. All right, well, we have a Mafia Story, and I am originally from Howard Beach, Queens, so I can tell you I've heard quite a few of these. This one is really like a modern movie. A suspected family feud is to blame for the death of 2 men in their 20s. Monday, the 2 men were being transported out of their city in their own private vehicle with police cars in front and in back as an escort. This took place on Route 6 outside of Petah Tikva. Another car came by and got in between the 3 vehicles, sped off, drove against traffic on the other side of the highway. This distraction worked perfectly, and 2 of the 3 cop cars followed. During this time, a separate vehicle drove by and let out a number of bullets, which penetrated the car of the private individuals and ultimately caused it to go off the road. The crash left the young men injured, and both died hours later in the hospital. The authorities believe it was revenge taken by the family of a 60-year-old man who was found dead overnight in Lod. Officers say they're familiar with both of the mafia families in question. They had been trying to drive the young Arab-Israeli men to a different city with police assistance, of course, until things got quiet. But, of course, that was not the case. Police did not chase the shooters and instead stopped to help the young men who were trapped in the damaged car on the side of the road. Following the incident, cars belonging to both of the families in question were set on fire in the city of Lod, and rioting ensued in that central area. Lod is just outside of Ben Gurion Airport, It's a city that's mixed with both Jews and Arabs. I'll keep you updated on this intense saga. Musicians often find themselves in the middle of politics, even when they don't want to be. A song called Peace Between Neighbors was performed last week by an Iraqi-Israeli Jew, but was produced by Tunisian music producer Noamani Cha'ari. This was quite the controversy, since Tunisia, a primarily Muslim country in North Africa on the Mediterranean coast, is not a friend of Israel's and says they do not plan to be. At least that's according to the Prime Minister. The song release quickly became a national issue, with commentators writing on social media that Cha'ari ought to be taught a good lesson and beaten to death or executed for his collaboration with an Israeli. Cha'ari has reportedly been fired from his public broadcasting job and is receiving direct death threats. The song was performed mostly in Arabic and was arranged by the Arab Council for Regional Integration, which is an organization dedicated to, well, regional integration between countries in the Middle East, and that includes Israel. The organization is trying to protect artists who are threatened by their governments for collaborating with Israelis. That's one of their top priorities. The song is meant to bring peace between Jews and Muslims. The songwriter is from Yemen, but is trying to keep his name out of the papers for fear of backlash. Tunisia is supposed to be the freest democracy in Africa. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz took to Twitter saying that Tunisian authorities need to step up and protect Cha'ari. Cha'ari, by the way, does not have a huge following. He is sort of a back-end producer and getting a lot of international attention for his latest work. If you didn't know, Israel is really in the cannabis game. Many startups and cannabis tech companies are working out of Tel Aviv, and now that is reflected in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Today, Monday, December 28th, 9 medical cannabis companies have listed themselves in the stock exchange, and since the government has approved exports, we can expect hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue coming from these cannabis tech companies that are now on the stock exchange. All right, well, that's it for today's news. Today is Monday, December 28th, 2020. You should have an email from me in your inbox. That would be the Israel Weekly News Wrap newsletter that has all the highlights from the week. If you don't have it in your inbox, send me a message. Put your email address in onto the contact page. You can find the link for that in the show notes. And you can get our weekly news wrap. It has GIFs. It has investigation details. It has everything. So if you don't have that and you want it, please reach out. Tel Aviv has a low of 11 degrees Celsius and a high of 19 degrees. That's 51 degrees Fahrenheit for the low, going up to 67 degrees for the high. Subscribe to the Israel Daily News Podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing it from. I am everywhere. I'll send you off with Eurocopter by Ido B. Zuki. This is a famous Israeli duo, and their music is appreciated by millions of people around the world. Have a great and productive day.